Hey, good morning, Eastern Oregon, and welcome to this August 20th version of AM Live on EOA. Your connection to Eastern Oregon, we're on the EOA network. And here in just a little bit, we're going to have Union County Emergency Manager Nick Vora with us here. How are you this morning?
Second Monday. I'm dragging a little bit. I had a long weekend.
Me too, and you're when you get older, the longer it takes you to recoup from, at least for me, Used to be when I was young, I'd drive all night and show up to work the next day or go to school the next day and be like, all right, here we go. Yeah.
Party till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, get to go to work at 7. Chipper.
But now it's like, it takes, have a hard weekend and I need another weekend to recover from the weekend.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Benny and I went to Bend for a golf tournament. I don't have all the pictures done, but I put some of them up. We can go through those pictures real fast. This is in Bend. I'm sure people know this little bench with the panhandler.
Yeah.
I figured Benny with that shirt. Benny had on just a regular old white shirt. Yeah. I was giving him a hard time. I'm like, dude, you dress like you're just going to work out or something. We're going to a golf tournament. So, yeah. And then I just thought that was a cool building there in downtown Bend. Keep going, Gabe. And then this is one of the kids that goes to the camp creating memories. He was a blast. And then there's your guy Jack
Burgoyne. Yeah,
keep going. Another one of the kids that goes to the camp. And then this next girl, Addie, we interviewed her and she'll be part of the video this year. She was a total sweetheart. The tournament this year was at River's Edge. I don't think it was quite as nice as the course last year, but it was a pretty nice course for a public course. It was pretty nice. We were at a hole where they did a game where you rolled these dice and it decided whether you sat on a toilet seat or stood when you hit your ball or had boxing gloves with a tennis racket. It was really nice weather. The tournament was really fun. And then on the way home, we hit a fire in Arlington, the 3 fires. And I shot that all the way across the river in the wind with no tripod. So it's kind of shaky, but I mean, you get an idea. That's from probably a mile away right there. So it was a pretty decent fire. And it was really windy and really smoky. And we ended up having to turn around just outside of Arlington and go all the way back to Biggs and go over the river and drive through Washington to get home.
Yeah,
but it wasn't bad. It was fun. We had a good time.
Made for a long night,
day.
Getting home.
Yeah. Especially after a long day out in the sun, you just want to get home,
right? And
then you hit that, and you're just like, oh gosh. This is. It only added about an hour and a half onto the trip altogether.
Right. But that's a long, in the past, we've gone down and back in the same day, which is like a horrible day, Yeah. This time you guys went down on Friday night and then spent the night and came back on Saturday, but that's still.
But even then, that Saturday is still, we got up at 5:30 and we got home at about 1:30 after we unloaded. That's a long day. That's a 20-hour day right there.
Yeah, no, and it's
but well worth it because that tournament's cool. The people involved are cool, and the kids are super sweet, and it was just a good time.
Well, and the reason I got involved in the tournament is because I really kind of want to duplicate that same event at Buffalo Peak. That's the idea.
Yeah.
And because it's strange. I mean, they have the camp. Sorry, knock something off here. The camp is at Wallowa Lake, and so then for that major fundraising event to be clear in Bend is a little odd, but that's where
all the people are that support it, though.
That's where the people are that have money. That's right.
I was going to say most of the people that were there were from that area.
Right.
I talked to a lot of people, and I don't know if we could get them to drive all the way over here for.
Well, no, but I think there would be people from this area that would go to that tournament to support that camp. So, and that's a cool camp. So Jack, he's the one that kind of recruited me onto that board and got me involved there, and that, for those of you that I've talked about it several times, it's this is a camp that's been it used to be the old Boy Scout camp up at Wallowa Lake, and I think in the late 90s there was a washout, and then that camp essentially was abandoned by the Boy Scouts. They still did some activities up there, but because of insurance, they just stopped their activities up there. And so then the people of Creating Memories worked out, they negotiated a lease agreement and took over that camp. The Boy Scouts still use that, but and then there were several cabins that were almost finished or in various progress of being built, and that process had been abandoned probably for 12 or 15 years. And so those projects were in disrepair, and so then over the last 10 years the Creating Memories people have gone in and redone each of those cabins. There's 3 cabins now that are available specifically for families of disabled children to come hang out at the camp for a week or whatever it is that they want, and they have a boat down at the dock at the lake, so then if the kids want to go fishing or whatever, and it's all run by volunteers, so it's just a super cool project. So
Very cool.
Yeah. All right, hey, you want to do sports?
Let's do it. AM Sports Report brought to you by Rockin' Sons Tire and Auto, east end of Adams in LeGrand. If you need anything for your vehicle, go see them or give them a call, 541-963-2757. Rockin' Sons Tire and Auto. Go see JB and the boys. High school football kicked off practice yesterday. I spoke with LHS second-year head coach Dalton Sheets this weekend, and he said basically that they don't have a lot of seniors, like 4 or 5 seniors this year, and they're a young yet experienced team. And, I mean, I guess we'll have to see how that translates on the field. LHS will kick off their high school football season a week from Friday at 6 o'clock right here at Community Stadium versus Astoria. Let's talk about the Peasley Watch. He had his second game this weekend, his second career NFL game preseason. He was 7 for 11 for 33 yards. Not quite as good QB rating as the first week. Right now he's currently 3rd on the depth chart for the Jets. That QB room for the Jets is most definitely full. Right now they have 5 quarterbacks on the roster. Future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers is the starter. Tyrod Taylor, who's a 14-year NFL vet, is the backup, and Peasley's listed as 3rd ahead of Adrian Martinez and 5th-round pick Jordan Travis from Florida State. It's cool. I'm excited. Anything can happen, and we just have to wait and see how it plays out and where Peasley ends up for this year. EOU women's soccer had a scrimmage this last Sunday at home versus Northern Idaho College. They don't keep score, but a little birdie told me that EOU scored 1 goal and Northern Idaho College didn't score any goals. So you can do the math on that one. I'll have head coach Josh Goodman and seniors Megan Gustafson and Brooke Snyder on the sports show this week. Here's a little sneak peek. Okay, I guess you don't get a sneak peek anyways. Basically, it was just Megan and Brooke talking about the goals for the team this year. The women's soccer team at EOU, they have a really good chance at making it back to the national tournament this year. I mean, it's been kind of one of the things that they do, but the last few years they haven't made the tournament. This senior class this year has never been to the national tournament, so hopefully they have a great season, win the CCC, and make it to the national tournament. Number 3 EOU volleyball started their season with a bang on Friday in Caldwell. They swept Arizona Christian and then beat number 5 Viterbo 3-1. And then on Saturday they swept Morningside, who was receiving votes in the national coaches poll in the nightcap. They knocked off number 15 Western Montana 3-1. For their efforts, they were named the CCC Team of the Week. And then they also swept all of the volleyball awards for the CCC this week. Kiana Mack was Defensive Player of the Week. Kira Vaughn was Attacker of the Week. And Lex McMurtry was Setter of the Week. And I appreciate EOU Athletics for letting me steal their graphics and put them on the show right there. Give them some credit for that. They head to Texas this week for 4 games on the road. Their home opener is September 13th. At Quinn at 6 p.m. versus Northwest. Kiana Mack and Kira Vaughn will be on the sports show next week, so pay attention for that. And, I mean, they're going to make a run at a national title. They're third in the country right now, and they got a chance. I mean, I think they have a legitimate chance every year for about the last 5 years. Finally, Cade's Courage. That's the QR link for the GoFundMe account for the McKinley family. Cade is a 3-sport athlete at LHS High School. He was recently diagnosed with a form of Ewing sarcoma cancer. If you're not a GoFundMe type of person, there's an account at US Bank where you can go in and donate. And keep your eyes open because the locals are going to be putting on a huge fundraiser for them September 21st. I'll have more information as it gets a little bit closer. And the goal is over 18 months to raise, I want to say $120,000 for the family. For right now, they're in Portland and he's undergoing radiation, and it's like 5 days in a row. I don't know the exact logistics of it, but I do know that it's very trying on the family, time and resource wise. So if you have the means, help them out. Yeah, that's it. AM Sports Report brought to you by Rockin' Sense Tire and Auto. Go see JB and the boys.
All right. Good stuff. Let's take a look at the weather cam. We got the weather cam back up and going, and the weather cam itself has been going. It's just the server that gives us the picture that we subscribe to, they got hacked, and so us finding a solution has been a little complicated. So, but let's look at the weather graphic. What's the weather going to be like in the up to 81 today and 51 tonight? It's getting to that place where the evenings are getting cooler again, and yeah, I mean it's starting to feel a little bit like fall. And
Saturday, it's only going to be in the 60s.
Yeah.
The high is on Saturday 67.
Really?
Yeah. That's definitely folly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's we're starting to notice it. You know, I mean, by Tanya and I, depending on the day, we will eat dinner late. You know, and it's like you can just tell it's getting darker earlier. I mean,
we still got a lot of summer left though.
We got a lot of summer.
We're not done with it's going to still be hot for a while. Don't get too excited about fall.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for summer to be gone yet.
Yeah. Yep.
I am excited about fall sports, but I enjoy the first month of fall sports the most because it's still really nice outside.
Yep.
And then it turns into rain and garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, talking about fall sports, we are streaming the LeGrand, Baker City, and Pendleton home games. I don't know if you have that graphic or that video that you can run, but if you're a business or an organization, it's a great opportunity for you to get your message out, and you can advertise in one of those teams or in all 3 of them or 2 of them. There are some people that are figuring that out. OTEC, you know, their market is Baker City and LeGrand, and they're one of our sponsors, and several other regional people. It's just a great opportunity for them. So be sure and check that out. And if you're trying to get your message in a unique place, be sure and reach out to us.
Yeah, so you can message us on here. The email addresses were on there. There's phone number. Yeah, you can reach out anyway.
Yep. And EOAHSsports.com. EOAHSsports.com is the URL that gets you to all of that information. All right. We will be right back with Nick Vora. He'll be joining us from Union County Emergency Services. He's the manager of that area, and we'll be right back. Welcome to Creating Memories for Disabled Children at beautiful Wallowa Lake, Oregon. Over the years, we have offered families of children with disabilities a free vacation at our beautiful camp properties. These getaways are a respite for families who often deal with an increased amount of emotional stress, financial hardships, and isolation. At Creating Memories, these families are able to relax in the knowledge that their child is loved and that their efforts are seen. Since 2018, we have completed a cabin renovation every 2 years, continually increasing our capacity to serve. We have fully renovated 3 cabins to become fully accessible lodging for families, including full kitchens and wheelchair-accessible bathrooms. We now turn our focus to the lodge building at the Creating Memories camp. Our vision for the lodge includes gatherings, networking, education, connections, community, and fellowship. We want it to be a place for families to share their struggles and joys, their needs and their knowledge, their setbacks and their celebrations. We are creating memories for disabled children, and our mission is to do just that. All right, and we are back with Nick Vora. Hey, how are you, man?
Good morning. I'm doing great.
Good. Good to have you with us, and it's always a pleasure.
Yeah,
And
thanks for having me back. I apologize that you just have me today, and I
Yeah.
didn't bring anybody exciting and with me, but
no,
next time.
that's all right. You and I could talk tech easy for an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, that would probably do some damage to your viewer numbers, but
Yeah. So, well, cool. And you just came back off vacation.
yeah, I went on a vacation to visit family in Minnesota and got back yesterday morning.
Yeah.
So,
When you get home, I mean, and that's where you grew up at?
in Minnesota,
I mean,
yes.
it's so,
Yeah.
I mean, the terrain, I mean, when you get back, is that a little bit of a shock? Just,
No,
I don't
because
know.
I've been going back ever since we moved away
Right.
to visit. So it's a very different area,
Yeah.
and like super high humidity stuff
Right,
that
yeah.
takes a little bit of used to getting reacclimated to every year.
The
But
mosquitoes are bigger.
yeah,
In August, it's like, this is, right?
June is probably the worst time,
Okay.
like late June, early July.
Yeah.
This year was a bad mosquito year, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for when I was there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, wow. And so then, and we've been, I mean, we're going to spend some time talking about fires this morning, because that's what's on everybody's mind, right?
Yeah, and that's substantially what's been occupying my time for
Right.
the month of July and,
Right.
and first part of August here. Normally, our fire season really takes off in August, generally.
Right.
A lot of fire people refer to August as a time they have to deal with fires, but for us, it started second week of July, and I had some sustained hot and dry conditions without any rain that just set up the fuels to be extremely receptive to any type of ignition. We had some dry lightning come through, or not necessarily even dry, but dry enough lightning that then we just had fires take off in a lot of places in mid-July.
Yeah. Is there a way of, do you measure that? Is that measurable? How do you tell that things are getting more flammable? I don't know.
So on the technical side of the wildfire world, they do fuel moisture measurements.
Okay.
So the Forest Service and other fire agencies can track what the actual fuel moistures of dead and down fuels are to carry a fire, and then using that in combination with atmospheric instability and relative humidity and things like that, and wind obviously, can help them predict the likelihood of a fire, if it starts, becoming a large fire.
Okay.
And so that's something that they use from a asset positioning standpoint, resources. If there's forecast for really extreme fire weather to be in any one given place, agencies in Oregon will move resources around to try and have them positioned.
Just based on that information,
Yeah, I imagine have heard of red flag warnings. That's more of short-term weather, like tomorrow or the next couple days. Long-term, it's a little bit more of a crystal ball that people are very skilled at, that know way more about fire weather and fuels than I do.
Right.
So I would probably sound like an idiot trying to explain it.
Right.
In the short term, it can look at critical things as far as the wind, weather, or humidity, lightning, to determine the risk of a large fire or difficult to catch fire occurring.
Yeah. Now, there's a way of tracking lightning strikes, right?
Yes.
How does that work?
So,
from a technical standpoint, do you know?
There's a couple ways of doing it that I don't fully understand all of them. At the extremely simplistic level, I imagine you at some point in your life have been listening to AM radio during a lightning storm nearby, where you hear that disruption to the signal. There's ground stations that look for that disruption caused by a lightning strike all over the U.S. They're everywhere, and the world for that matter. And with directional antennas, similar to like a fire lookout, can triangulate. Well, I heard the disruption that way. Another ground station might hear it this way, and they can see where they intersect.
Oh, interesting.
So at a very extremely simplistic level, that's how it operates with ground stations that can directionally identify where the RF disturbance from a lightning strike came from.
And don't they track it a lot with satellite pictures too? So
I don't understand the technology that goes on behind the satellite tracking of lightning. The ground station is set up as a little bit more what I'm familiar with.
Okay. Yeah.
And so then let's say there have been lightning strikes that have occurred. Then are there planes that fly over and check?
Yep. So there's recon flights or reconnaissance flights that happen during the daytime with a human spotter looking for to see smoke after a lightning event, and then they also have planes that fly at night with infrared, and they'll fly areas that have had lightning, and oftentimes there's heat that they can see at night that is it's so small of a fire that you wouldn't see the smoke from it necessarily during the day flying in an airplane. And then we also have the traditional fire lookouts in some areas as well. And in addition to that, fire detection camera systems that are maintained. So there's going from a person sitting at the top of a tower to cameras with advanced software that are out looking for smoke, and then to airplanes that fly during the day and airplanes that fly at night.
And I think I've been in one of those lookouts one time when I was younger and climbed it, and they have this fairly complicated compass system.
Yeah.
Is that right? I mean, I can't remember. And I think I remember it being, but it's a mechanical, it's not a compass, it's a mechanical wheel like that you spin, it's calibrated clearly, and you like point the sight of the thing.
It's like a rifle scope,
Yeah,
essentially.
you point it at the fire, and then that gives you the degrees. And I mean, is that how they triangulate those?
Yeah, so it's a pretty basic system, but it works really well.
Yeah.
Where on the turntable, and I forget the name the Lookout World uses for that setup, but you can determine the azimuth to the fire,
Right,
basically your compass degrees
Yeah.
to the fire, and then also based on your elevation or depression from the lookout, can use that with in combination with a topo map to get a relatively both precise and accurate estimation of where the fire is.
Well.
And it's very simple technology, but you think just you know where the hills are around you, and you know what direction and what angle, and you can see where they intersect. And then if you look in the dispatch center, they have a big map on the wall, which, well, there's all the electronics that can be done, also can be old school with a string and the same azimuth ring from
Right.
the lookout, that if they call in a fire at 22 degrees, you can take the string, go from 22 degrees, draw it out, and see, okay, the fire's going to be somewhere along
On
this
this line, yeah.
That thing's called a Osborne Firefinder.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what that instrument is called.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you have another lookout tower
Yep, then you
that
can, where
happens to see the same thing, then you kind of know, oh, well, where those two
Yep.
strings cross, that's
Totally, yeah, thank you.
likelihood.
It's crazy with the technology that we have today. We're still using something from like the 60s or
well, I
50s
think,
or whatever year
Right.
that thing was.
You don't have to worry about any updates glitching or firmware
That's true.
failing.
That
on
is
it,
true.
and
That is 100% true.
But I think that it's kind of like it's all of those things compiled together, and they're kind of self-checking. They check themselves, and so it's kind of like Kyle's really good at math, but one of the most helpful skills that I didn't ever understand when I was a kid was estimating. I mean, you look at a string of numbers and it should be around this, and so then when you get out the calculator and it's totally different, it's like, well, did I punch in the numbers? I mean, and so it's just those kinds of things cross-check each other.
Yeah. And yep, and also one thing that I forgot on the fire detection side is we also have satellite, and it takes quite a bit more heat for it to register on a satellite. Generally, we're aware of it before it shows up, but that is an additional layer of being able to help determine locations and such.
That tool was patented in 1935. And they stopped making it for a while, but another company Leupold used to make it.
Oh.
And then another company picked it up. It was actually invented by a Forest Service worker from Portland.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
You are the master.
Well, I looked that part of it up. I knew what it was called, but I didn't know that. 1935. I mean, we're still we're still using a tool that is highly effective too.
Well, and what's funny is that that same technology is what sailors used. That's technology. I don't know if you even call it that, but those same tools are the tools that sailors used when they were. They had the stars as a reference and
pre-GPS.
Yeah. Dead reckoning, is that what they call that? I don't come in anyhow. We're getting totally off on another trail, yeah. So, but no. One of the questions I've been thinking about, Nick, is how do you? So they talk about containment. So a fire starts, and clearly it's burning out from a center point where it started. Mm-hmm. Okay, and depending on the terrain, changes how quickly it spreads, or the wind, or whatever the case might be. So when they talk about containment, are they talking about keeping the border of the particular percentage of that border from growing? Is that I don't know. Help me understand
So
that.
it would be another way you could look at it is the portion of the fire line that is secure from where the growth of the fire has been checked.
Meaning it's
essentially.
not. They're essentially they're confident that it's not going to, the areas where it's checked, it's not going to go beyond that area. Is that correct?
Yes, or at least that there's a high level of confidence that barring something unusual or extreme that it would not. Obviously,
Right.
there's always the odd circumstance where
It jumped the fire line.
where a dust devil could come through and blow embers outside a line. But typically, when you hear someone refer to like 35% containment, that would mean that of the fire's perimeter, about 35% of that has been
Controlled.
controlled quite well. And oftentimes, fire agencies are quite conservative in their estimates of containment, and they don't, because it's the last thing you want to do is tell someone, "Hey, you don't worry about this, we got it," and then it's like, "Oh, actually, we don't got it." So generally, they're quite conservative in their estimates to not oversell and underdeliver from the statistics side of things. But essentially, it's the part of the fire that's not actively burning.
Yeah.
So basically, what Nick's saying is, if you have a 100-mile perimeter,
Right,
and you say the fire's 35% contained, that means 35 of those miles are controlled and have a fire line. And
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. Got it. And that makes sense. That's kind of what I thought. And so then when they say, yeah, this fire is going, it's burned this many acres and it's uncontained. I mean, there's uncontained. Is that the word they use?
So
or
if there's 0% containment,
yeah, that's it.
that
Okay,
doesn't necessarily mean that there's no fire line or that they haven't got a decent handle on it. It just might mean that there's along the fire line there might still be active flames.
Right.
That they're actively fighting and trying to mop up that fire perimeter. So mopping up is the term that's used as far as getting all the heat and smoke inside the line eliminated to a distance that provides a level of comfort that the fire's not going to cross that line.
Okay.
So if it hasn't really been mopped up all that well, they haven't had an opportunity to do that, might not say that it's contained there. It might be lined, but it might not necessarily be contained at that point until they get a higher level of comfort on the fire not crossing the control line.
And like you said, they're super conservative with that number. They are. Like they aren't going to go, if they have it 10% contained in real life, they're probably putting out a number like 5.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like for a reason.
But from a visual standpoint, for somebody who knows nothing about fire, they look at the flames and they go, "Holy smoke, that's crazy." That's like, and that can be the case. But part of it is that when they're fighting fires, they're figuring out where they can make that line. They can draw that line. Okay, which means that so the space that they're going to draw the line at is outside of where the fire is already burning. And so there's fuel, so the bottom line is a fire could be contained, but they're still, or they have some idea where it's still very active. It's burning because there's fuel inside that area that hasn't burned yet.
It's possible
that right?
There's oftentimes, unless it's really apocalyptic type fire conditions, it's quite common to have islands of unburned fuel within a fire. If the wind blows a fire and it fingers out, and you might catch it in front and on the sides, and maybe have a decent containment line around it. Like you mentioned, though, there can be islands, little just pockets, and maybe areas inside between the control line and the fire front where they need to remove the unburned fuel to establish that solid containment where even though crews might have a pretty good handle on the fire, there still may be a lot of things that could generate smoke.
Yeah. No, it's such a and then the other thing is that we've been really fortunate to not have very many fires yet at this point in Union County.
Yeah, we've been very lucky. I've told people we're the whole of the chaos donut, and I'm just fine with us staying that way.
Right.
Some of our neighboring counties have really gotten
Hammered.
just a ton of fires this year. There's about 1.2-ish, that's just a real approximate number. I think it's 1.1 something million acres that have burned so far in Oregon this year. And substantially, that's been in Eastern Oregon.
Yeah, it's the worst fire season so far since acreage-wise, since they started keeping track in like
Wow.
1992 or something like that.
So when there's still a lot of fire season to go, as you guys
A
mentioned,
lot.
Yeah.
there's still a lot of summer to go. So definitely this year has certainly been worse than than average
Yeah.
by far, and it's definitely one that is probably worse than most as far as just acres burned with fires going from small to large very quickly. And so we've been doing a lot of evacuations as well, as people have probably seen a lot more stuff about the level 1, 2, and 3 evacuations and shelters and things like that than they would on a typical fire year.
So when you have, let's talk about defending residences and buildings and stuff like that. So when you have when you see that there are structures that are inside of a kind of a non-defensible area, you know, how does that work? I mean, from a procedural standpoint, how do you guys deal with those kinds of things?
So in the initial attack or initial response to a fire, it's all local agencies. So Forest Service, Oregon Department of Forestry, the rural fire protection districts, and municipal fire departments respond to the fire. Generally, the fire districts and municipal fire departments have an emphasis on structure protection, and the Forest Service and Oregon Department of Forestry have an emphasis on the wildland fire suppression side of things. But in the initial attack, everybody plays together, works together, and depending on what the fire is doing, they may decide that they're going to focus the efforts on structure protection. If it's a wind-driven fire, if it's 30-mile-an-hour wind and the fire is burning in brush with 40, 50-foot flame lengths, you can't do a lot of direct attack without burning up. So they may choose to focus their activities on making structures in the path of that fire defensible. Maybe burning out fuels around the building, getting wood piles removed from adjacent to the house, or if there's a wood deck with maybe stuff piled underneath it, trying to get that stuff removed. So they try to protect the structures in the path of a fire if you can't stop the fire itself. Because in some cases it's not realistic to stop a fire if it's weather driven like that. And then in the extended attack phase, we have the fire teams that come in, and there's the Forest Service and state teams that will focus on the wildland fire suppression. And then the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office, if there's a conflagration, will bring in task forces of structure protection resources. And typically when they bring these in, they try to not dump all of the local resources on that to give them some relief and also allow them to be available for initial attack to other fires. So we'll see task forces coming from areas that are not on fire to help out the areas that are.
No, let's back up. You said say that word again.
Conflagration.
Yeah, and what is that, and how does that?
We can get into the weeds pretty quick on some of the technicalities of stuff, but at a basic level, there's the local initial attack. Local fire departments respond right away and try to do what they can. Then there's immediate response through the State Fire Marshal's office, where if a local fire agency needs help, needs more resources, they can get some assistance from other local agencies through the State Fire Marshal's office in that initial attack phase still. So there's that, and then more extended attack when the fire's been burning for days, weeks. then oftentimes, if structures are at risk, the governor can declare a conflagration under the Conflagration Act that the
Okay.
state has.
And that word just means a really bad fire.
Yeah, so
that's what it is.
Right, but you were kind of getting at what I was at, and that is who enacts that and how does
So,
that and what does that
the
mean
governor,
now?
and
Yeah.
most often it's requested by a county, saying that we would like the governor to request a conflagration.
we need
for
more
this incident.
resources.
And that's
Yes.
just all about money, right?
It's also
Essentially,
about
resources?
It's about resources,
Okay, yeah.
but resources cost money.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can't easily separate them.
Right.
But when the state the governor declares a conflagration act for a specific incident, then they can use funds available through the state to pay for local resources from other agencies to come and do fire protection. So if we had a fire here near La Grande and it was declared a conflagration, we might see resources from Salem, the coast, Portland metro area, Central Oregon that come here and assist our local fire departments with the structure protection aspect of it.
So different businesses throughout La Grande, like let's say have a construction business, but they also have a fire crew. That's kind of their side business of their business. Okay.
Quite normal around
Yeah,
here.
right.
Yeah, it's
and
quite
so
common.
when are those fire crews tapped on the shoulder and said, go here or go here? Help me understand that process.
So this is going to quickly get into an area that is outside of
Right.
what I know about.
Okay.
But they work as contractors
Okay.
for the state or the federal government, or both.
Okay.
And so those contractors will be on a list. And when a resource is needed, it may not be local. It might be
okay.
somewhere else. It depends on where they're able and willing to go and what the terms of their contract are. They can be requested to go to a fire just about anywhere.
Right.
And so and typically they are in the wildland fire suppression extended attack is where you see those. We do have mechanisms, and I say we generously, typically it's Oregon Department of Forestry and also the Forest Service to use those contractors on initial attack. Or if we have those red flag days, we're expecting maybe dry lightning, some significant fire weather, we can have them on duty, so to speak, and available to respond and assist with that initial attack. But most commonly, you see the contractors really show up in force with the large amounts of 20-person hand crews and all the engines and water tenders show up in the extended attack phase of a fire when a management team arrives and they order resources to support the team.
Well, and the reason I asked that question is to understand how that affects local teams, but then also, so then when a fire is escalated and the governor says, yeah, this is a bad one, we need more resources. Sometimes those, some of the extra resources sometimes are contractors like that, right?
Yes, usually Conflagration Act resources are fire departments.
Okay.
Because
I
there's
see.
structure
Okay.
protection with the big red fire trucks.
Got it. Okay.
And or what we would call a Type 6, basically a brush truck on a pickup truck chassis,
Okay.
a fire truck on a pickup truck chassis. So we see those for structure protection with a conflagration. Oftentimes our local contractors are involved more in the wildland fire suppression, working with the wildland agencies
Got
like
it.
the Forest Service or Oregon Department of Forestry.
Okay.
And the substantial reason for that is the equipment and gear for structural firefighting is extremely expensive. And where the trucks are
Right.
$750,000
Right.
and and it's also the certifications and everything are more difficult. Would be much more difficult for a contractor to try and maintain relative to a municipal department.
Interesting. Okay. So in a really bad fire, that helps me understand. Okay, so recently then just the last few days, we've had really our first significant fire in Union County. Am I right?
And that being, calling it significant in the context of what has happened
Right.
would be, other counties would say, you call that a significant
Right,
fire?
but significant for us.
For
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
it's the first fire that we've had in Union County that's reached much notable acreage this year. And that'd be the Boulder Creek fire. And it's burning in the extreme far eastern part of Union County in the Eagle Cap Wilderness.
Okay.
And so sandwiched between Wallowa and Baker counties.
Okay. And so then let's talk about wilderness fires, because this is something I don't think it wasn't really until I was having a conversation with Paul Anders that I really kind of was like, we just watch wilderness fires, right? I mean, there's not, what can we do to fight wilderness?
So using the Boulder Creek fire as an example, they, being the U.S. Forest Service, has elected to go with a full suppression strategy on this fire. So fire is, we know, is completely natural, and a lightning strike in the mountains that creates a fire would happen with or without human intervention, and would historically burn and eliminate fuels, and in most cases prevent the massive, just mega fires that we call them now. But also there's other climatic things at play that lead to fires growing the way they do. But back in the wilderness context, a management agency could choose to let it burn. They could choose to do some modified strategy, maybe protecting some inholdings or values at risk, but letting the fire burn in another location. Or could do what we call full suppression, where we're going to do what we can to try and stop this fire. And this is me just going from the press release that the Forest Service put out on the fire yesterday, where based on other fire conditions in other fires burning in the area, they've elected to go with a full suppression strategy on the Boulder Creek fire, just so that it doesn't become a distraction from other fires that need to be dealt with. Because there's always a risk if you go with a more observational, hands-off, let the fire burn for resource objectives, for fuel reduction.
Right.
That weather could change, and it could go from a beneficial fire to a non-beneficial fire quickly, that then could exhaust a lot of resources, or require a lot of resources that may be needed elsewhere.
Right.
So there's a lot of thinking and thought that goes into the decision on if a specific fire is going to be managed for resource objectives or just put out.
Right.
And in this case, they have repellers. So there's smoke jumpers who parachute out of airplanes. Then there's repellers who will slide down a rope out of a helicopter. And then there's helitat crews where they will land and get out. But there's repellers that are on this fire, and then also helicopters assisting with water drops from the air. And I believe there's some other resources on the fire as far as hotshot crews and others that are working on securing the lines around that Boulder Creek fire.
How do they decide what agency is gonna? So you have like the what is it? The Northeast Joint, whatever that is, task force or whatever. How do they decide what agency is gonna? So like this fire is in Baker and Union County. How do they decide that Baker County Sheriff's is gonna put out the information on it, or if Union County?
So this fire is a perfect example of coordination between agencies.
Right.
So yesterday we met, being the Forest Service, Union County, and Baker County, and decided this is what the fire is doing, and this is where it could go. This is the area that we should let people know about, to have heightened awareness.
Possible evacuation.
That they may need. Well, it's on Forest Service in the wilderness. Still, if someone's planning a trip or something, or hunting, something like that, we want to make sure that they're aware that either a hazard exists or has the potential to exist in that area. So we get together, talk about what the fire is doing, where it could go, and then the map you'll notice that came out for the fire yesterday has Union County Sheriff's Star on one side and Baker County Sheriff's Star on the other, that it's one map for both counties. And so that was done together, because it can be really confusing if you have agencies operating in their own sandbox.
That's why I was at,
and
that's
not
why I
talking.
asked. Yeah.
And so another example of coordination would be like the Falls Fire and burning between Harney and Grant County that grew really big. And I was down in Harney County assisting them with that fire when it took off. So given that things were happening really fast, and we didn't have the luxury of time to make pretty maps and sit down and talk about, okay, where are things going? What should we do? It was more like, hey, the fire just went 5 miles this direction. We need to expand out another 15. We're drawing much bigger boxes much more quickly. So in that case, we set up a Zoom call with Grant County that we just ran continuously all day long. And it worked out really well that as things were changing, we could have that coordination on, okay, this is what the fire's doing. The operations person could just jump in the tent, because Harney County were co-located at the fire camp as the Emergency Operations Center. So we were truly tied in as far as the county with the incident management team on the fire. And so they would drop in the tent, or we would drop in theirs and say, what's going on? Where do we need to get people out of the way? And that allowed them to allocate resources for, especially if we knew there were people getting cows out in a certain area. The team had a D-Day or Battle of Britain style map that they had markers for the private landowners that were getting their cows. And then as they were getting information on, okay, this is where Joe's going to get his cows out, they would move his marker. So then if the fire made a move, they would know that to try and get some resources in there to assist them. So because essentially you're protecting the values that are at risk, and initial in that stage of the fire was people protecting their livelihood and getting their livestock out on both the private and public land. So that's something as far as the coordination happens. Sometimes has to happen very quickly, but this summer has been a shining example, I think, of agencies very quickly working together to coordinate evacuations.
Yeah.
What is the Northeast Oregon Joint Information Center?
So the concept of a JIC, or Joint Information Center, is multiple agencies with a shared responsibility for getting information out, work together so that you don't have conflicting information coming out at different times. So the Northeast Oregon Joint Information Center initially was an effort in between the counties and Forest Service and Oregon Department of Forestry in Union, Baker, and Wallowa counties. It's grown and morphed and included more agencies since then. So now we have, for example, the Sheriff's Office, LeGrand Police Department has been a really key player, and Oregon Department of Forestry and Forest Service continue to be. And what it allows us to do is, on a major incident where we need to get information out, we all have a common operational concept as far as a cadence and where things are. We have a physical location at the county where people can converge on, and the public information officers can put their heads together and share workload on something. So an example would be, maybe there's a major criminal incident in LeGrand. So the LeGrand Police Department may need some help with public information. So then we can call in resources from the county. And we have even had, on criminal incidents, like Oregon Department of Forestry resources assisting with the public information. So it works really well. And I think our Northeast Oregon JIC is a shining example of the interagency coordination with just people pitching in to do what needs to be done. To get the job done. And also, I think, to answer a previous question you had about resources that get sent to a fire, or maybe I think one of you talked about getting sent to a fire. In Union County, Northeast Oregon, we do a great job, I think, with nearest resource, where it might be a Forest Service fire, but if a state resource is closest, they go and are the initial responder, or vice versa.
Right.
It's not, oh, that's on the other side of the line. Sorry, it's so that's also part of the reason why you'll see in our area that we don't have a lot of fires that typically get very big, because our initial attack resources are outstanding.
It has to be like that in rural areas. I mean, it would, you know what I mean? Like, could you imagine in a rural area if it wasn't the closest resource first? Like, just wouldn't work. It's like the same thing with LeGrand Police and Union County Sheriff. If something's going on, a sheriff's not going to sit there and be like, well, you're not in my jurisdiction. That doesn't work in small towns.
Exactly. And that's one thing that you don't see that everywhere. We're with that closest resource responding.
Right.
Oh yeah, I've seen like TikTok videos of sheriffs and city police just going at it over jurisdiction, and you're not supposed to be here, and it's like that's unheard of here. Like, it wouldn't work.
We're super lucky that, from whether it's law enforcement agencies to wildland fire agencies, or the combination of local departments and wildland fire agencies, just work seamlessly together and just do what needs to be done and sort out kind of where the lines were once the dust settles.
As it should be.
Yeah. Do you ever get bored?
No.
I was going to say, I mean, when you rattle through the different areas that you're involved in, I mean, and it's so, I mean, fighting fires, the way that you just described that totally makes sense. But I mean, it is like a battle. I mean, it's all of the resources are at war with this fire, trying to move livestock out of harm's way. That's a whole nother component that a lot of people wouldn't even think of, I mean, I grew up around livestock, but it's like, man, that's a complication. I mean, cows don't all hang out together, and if they're in the mountains, or if they're in some, I mean, yeah, how do you even find them all, and
a lot of times it's the owners that are going out there looking for theirs.
And
they're like, I don't want to lose my cow. Like, I'm going and finding
that's
these damn
$1,500 on 4 legs right there, and yeah.
And so that's certainly with livestock, especially in rangeland, or especially really rugged terrain.
Right.
That's a real significant issue. And one of the things that from also evacuation is, where do you take them?
Right.
Oftentimes, large livestock owners have the ability to, generally, people will rise to the occasion and say, hey, you can go put them on my place, or bring them here or there, but you also have to transport them. Where are all the trucks going to come from? And that's where you really see the community come together to support each other.
Food, they have to be fed. If you're moving them out of wherever they're grazing.
And with hay, all that. So I've been working with Oregon State University. Oregon State University Extension has been doing an outstanding job jumping on really early for the fires in Oregon, soliciting hay donations, and then also identifying the people that need it. So working with Darren Walenta and all the awesome folks with OSU Extension, I put together a survey that they're distributing to people impacted by fires to identify if they have a need for feed, hay, etc. And then they're pairing that with donations of trucking services and donations of hay and feed to match. If there's someone in Harney County who maybe has offered some hay and someone in Harney County who needs it, then they can match the two together.
Wow.
In the West Side fires a few years ago, they played a huge role. Similar role. There was a lot of displaced livestock, a lot, and they did the exact same thing. It's like, we're going to figure out we're going to coordinate how to get these animals where they need to go, how to get the food, how to get them. You know what I mean? It's crazy, man. How much goes into it. Like when you look at the big picture, it's not just a fire burning. There's all these other things that have to be, overseen.
And also there's power outages associated with fires, where fires burn through power lines, and then there can be people who are even maybe they're not threatened by the fire, but if they are on medical equipment that is reliant on electrical, then making sure then that
They have a
we're getting
generator
resources
or-
provided to them, or at least providing a place where they can go, and all the sheltering aspects and dealing with companion animals and the livestock, where it's one
many
thing to
things.
have 500 head of cows. That's certainly a very challenging situation to deal with. But then also when you have the one llama,
Right.
too, it's like what if someone shows up at a shelter and like Ed needs a place. Like, okay, well you could Ed's a llama. Okay, so
Put them in the barn. Road closures is another thing too.
Yes.
Like it's another
That's-
crazy
yeah.
part of it. Like we experienced that on Saturday. Like it happens so fast that it's like, okay, we got to figure. Like nobody knew. Even when we went back to Biggs and we're talking in the gas station, they were like, nobody knew about the fire yet. They didn't know. They weren't turning people around until you got right there. I mean, and it makes everything just chaotic for that short amount of time. I mean, once they get the flow going and everything, get something set up, it becomes a lot easier. But like in the beginning, it's quite chaotic. Dude.
Oh.
As you know. I
yeah.
mean,
So, were you
No,
gonna ask a question? Okay.
so I have. We got to quit here, but there's one question I wanted to ask you that I think you can answer, and that is so a few years ago there was a fire in California. The power lines of that fire complicated that or started that fire, depending on and that power company was sued and is still in the process of being sued. So since then, power companies, including OTEC, they've developed a plan of we might have to shut the power off. Is that because to reduce liability on their part, or do you have some sense of why companies are doing that?
Substantially, it's because it's from a liability management standpoint.
Okay.
But also there wouldn't be liability if there wasn't a risk. Right. So to say that they're just doing it from liability or for insurance reasons, I don't think would be correct. I think it could say that fire, the campfire brought light to a risk that is presented by power lines.
Okay.
And power companies and the managers of utilities decided that from mitigating the risk that power lines present to the public is implementing the concept of public safety power shutoffs. And if you look at a lot of the plans, they're waiting until there's quite extreme conditions before those. Like for example, with OTEC's plan, when you have the winds and red flag conditions such that would trigger them doing their public safety power shutoffs, I think most people would look at that and say, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
That to try and mitigate that risk, to shut the power off and wait for the risk of trees falling on the lines to go down, and then get things back on.
So then, because one of the other things that I saw somewhere along the line is that they're even putting automatic PTZ cameras on some of the power lines along the way that will look for, I don't know what they look for, sparks or cross line, but I imagine that that's all a part of reducing the liability.
It's reducing the liability and the risk presented to the public by electrical infrastructure, essentially. And so there's cameras that they're putting in for fire detection. There's weather stations that are installed to be able to determine what local winds are, so that they're not shutting down an area larger than what needs to be.
Got it.
And then there's different changes in technologies that they're doing with fuses, and to traditional fuses, when they would blow, there'd be a shower of sparks that would fall to the ground. Now there's technology for contained fuses that don't release those sparks. So things like that. It's a huge suite of different technological improvements, including at the most expensive level, putting lines underground to mitigate.
Interesting. Well, thank you. And that's been a kind of a question that I've had hanging out there, and I presumed some of that. So, well, Nick, it's always enjoyable for you to have.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming
information overload as always, but I love it.
It is, but it's so, it's just so nice. And I've said this before, that I love it when a system comes together or when a team comes together and they accomplish something. I would imagine there's something when the JIC comes together or where you have an incident and that's got to be pretty rewarding for you.
It's awesome to see. I love it. And because it's incredibly frustrating to be part of something where things are not working that well. But the other side of it, where everyone is there for a common purpose, for a common goal, doesn't matter what it says on their shirt or on the shoulder of their sleeve, and just there to get the job done, which is what we have here locally, and we're super fortunate for it.
We call that being well-oiled.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. Really
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You want to get us out of here, man?
On this day, August 20th, 1741, Alaska is first seen by a Russian expedition led by Danish explorer Vitus Bering. Where do you think that name ended up? Bering.
Bering.
That's what the Bering Sea is.
Bering.
Yeah. The Bering Sea. 1866, President Andrew Johnson formally declares the U.S. Civil War over on this day.
What year?
1866.
66, okay.
1896, on this day, the dial telephone is patented. 1920, the first U.S. commercial radio station, 8MK Detroit, begins daily broadcasting. 2015, I thought this one was stupid but funny as well. 2015, on this day, 30 students at West Point Military Academy are hospitalized and injured in a mass pillow fight. How do you get hospitalized in a pillow fight?
2015?
Yeah, 20. And then 2023, last year on this day, Russia's Luna 25 spacecraft has crashed into the moon, according to Roscosmos. And I only picked it because I wanted to say that word, Roscosmos. And that's what Russia calls their astronauts. Ours is NASA, or they call them Roscosmos.
Huh.
It's weird, interesting. On this day, the number one song in 1984 was What's Love Got to Do With It by Tina Turner.
What's love?
And then the quote of the day comes from Amit Ray. Our greatest strength lies in our ability to channelize our energy for the right cause and stay motivated against all the odds. One more time. Our greatest strength lies in our ability to channelize our energy for the right cause and stay motivated against all the odds.
All right. Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yep.
So this Thursday on the show, Robert Strope and hopefully one of the city council members are going to be on talking about a change in the city charter on how elections of city council members might be held in the future. So it'll be kind of interesting.
Cool.
So, all right.
Yeah.
See you then.
We'll see
Thanks,
you
man.